This is CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Good morning again. I'm Patrick Greenlaw at the CNN Center in Atlanta. In case you're just joining us, this is a live picture from Tokyo. I'm not sure exactly what location, but CNN has confirmed that President Bush has collapsed during a state dinner in Tokyo during his trade mission there. And we do not have any word on his update at this point. As you can see, there is a lot of confusion. A little bit earlier, a couple minutes ago, we did see a picture of an ambulance. Presumably, that was either in front of the residence where he was at the state dinner or at the hospital itself. You can see a lot of people running around. There's an ambulance right there. We're not sure if the president is in that ambulance at this point or exactly what the situation is. Again, these are live pictures from Tokyo, but the president has collapsed at a dinner during his trade mission. We really do not have any more information at this point. I'm going to, just while we keep these pictures going, I'm going to just look into the computer here and see if there is any more information. This is according to Reuters. U.S. President George Bush was taken ill at a state banquet in Tokyo. That's according to Japanese television. Here's another one from Reuters, also was taken ill Wednesday night, Japanese television. Let's just see if we have any other, any additional information. U.S. President George Bush collapsed Wednesday during a dinner at Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa's official residence. That's according to Japanese television. As you can see here, this is a reporter in Japan, presumably going on live. I'm not sure if that's the hospital or the Prime Minister's residence at this point. You can see an ambulance in the portico of this building. Here's some more information. I'm going to just stay on these pictures. I'm looking at the computer and trying to give you what information is coming in here on our computer from the different wire services as well as from CNN in Tokyo. Again, was taken ill. No, here's another bulletin here. Let's just see if there's anything on this. Reporters at the dinner say Bush first felt ill while standing in the receiving line and was taken to the bathroom by a doctor. The president returned to the receiving line and then sat down for dinner. This is according to the Associated Press. The Japanese television report says Bush collapsed at his seat after eating the meat course of the dinner. That's the only information there. Let's see if there's any additional information. Again, the president was taken ill. These are a little bit dated bulletins at this point. We are going to be, senior White House correspondent Charles Bierbauer has been traveling with the president. We are awaiting his arrival at a spot either on the telephone or on a live transmission where we can talk to him. Presumably he was with the press corps attending this state dinner and could give us some additional information. This is, again, a live picture. As you can see, that portico of the ambulance has now backed out of that portico. There's a lot of people running around. Of course, there was a lot of security, a lot of press people, and members of the diplomatic corps during this state visit, the end of a state visit, as a matter of fact, to Japan. It also took the president to Australia and to Singapore and to South Korea before arriving in Japan. That's the very latest information that we have. Now, CNN's Charles Bierbauer, as I said, our senior White House correspondent, is traveling with the president. He actually talked with him earlier today in an interview. He's on the phone right now from Tokyo with the very latest. Charles?
Hello?
Charles, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, only barely. I'm in the White House Press Filing Center here in downtown Tokyo. We're certainly some distance from the action, but from what we can see via Japanese television and what we have heard, President Bush was at a dinner hosted by Prime Minister Miyazawa at Miyazawa's residence when he felt ill. It's my understanding that at one point he laid down, but a decision was made that it might be best to take the president to a hospital. He walked to the ambulance. We've been able to discern that, and the ambulance was seen just a short while ago, maybe 2-3 minutes ago, leaving the Prime Minister's residence en route to I believe, Keio Hospital here in Tokyo. We really do not have much information as to what might have happened. One would have to say it's a good sign that the president was moving under his own power. He felt ill at dinner. I spoke with him earlier this afternoon, our time, about 3 hours ago. He acknowledged that he's been having a little trouble with jet lag, said it was worse in Australia, has been getting a reasonable amount of sleep, but still wakes up at odd hours. We are, of course, on about day 10 by my count of a 12-day trip with a lot of flying and a lot of time dislocation, which is certainly a factor in the president's health and general strength. But what we do not know is exactly what it was that might have made him ill at this dinner this evening here in Tokyo. At this point, that's about all the information we have.
Charles, if you can hear me, can you just give us some sort of, in terms of routine, how does the president, his personal physician with him normally on these foreign trips, these trips to other countries, and was his personal physician with him at this state dinner or in close proximity to the president?
Absolutely. President Bush always has at least one of the White House physicians in attendance with him. There are probably, although I haven't seen all of them, there are probably two of them on this trip, given its length and nature. In fact, in every motorcade that the president travels in, there is an ambulance for just this kind of eventuality. That's what we saw leaving the Prime Minister's residence a short while ago. Probably no one in the world has better medical attention than the President of the United States. And it would certainly be worth the precaution if he were feeling ill to get him to someplace where he might have better care. If you see the pictures, you can see the ambulance. Those are pictures a short while ago outside the Prime Minister's residence where the dinner was taking place.
Charles, one of your colleagues, Associated Press, is reporting that the president apparently was not feeling well at the dinner and then went to the men's room, was accompanied there by some members of his staff, and then actually returned to the dinner table and then, I guess, started feeling even worse, and then that's when they decided to take him to the hospital. Do you have any...
That would be consistent with what we are hearing, but I must caution that we're in a slight disadvantage because these dinners are private dinners, or at least we don't have press sitting in there watching the comings and goings. There is, in fact, a pool of reporters that travels with the president and is close in attendance. In fact, CNN's Mary Tillotson is in that pool this evening, and when she's at a position where she can file a report back to the rest of the media, that might give us some detail beyond that. What we're hearing a lot from is descriptions of the movement itself from the Prime Minister's residence as we've been watching them on Japanese television pictures.
Charles, just stay on the line. I just want to clarify something for our viewers. Vice President Dan Quayle is in Washington, and as we told you a little bit earlier, he was scheduled to go to New Hampshire today to make a couple of days of campaign appearances on behalf of President Bush. At this point, we do not know if those plans have been canceled or somehow changed as far as going to New Hampshire for the Vice President, and as soon as we get that information, we will keep you updated. Charles, getting back...
Let me just add, I don't think we can make any real assessment at this point of the severity of this, but it would appear to be certainly that the president did not feel well, whether it's a stomach ailment, whether it's... he did not complain when I talked with him today of any particular bugs or viruses or anything of that sort, just some general jet lag as we move along this rather lengthy itinerary across Asia and the Pacific. As I say, it was 3 hours ago that I saw him. He was not ill then. It may have been something that hit him at dinner, and we'll have to get more detail as the day progresses here.
Charles, not to try to give you, put you on the spot as far as any kind of medical opinions, but just to clarify for us, if you will, as you well know, the president was on medication for a thyroid condition as well as an irregular heartbeat in the last year or so. Is he still on those medications, as particularly on the irregular heartbeat?
The best of my recollection is that he no longer needs the medication for the heartbeat, that he will have a continuing medication for the thyroid. In fact, the thyroid was destroyed in the process here, and he will. That's a medication that he will take for the rest of his life to restore the balance of the missing thyroid. But this would not appear to be a heart problem, at least not a continuing problem. The heart problem that the president had, the fibrillation was related to the thyroid problem which developed last year.
Okay, senior White House correspondent Charles Bierbauer on the phone from Tokyo with the latest information that he has. Just a minute ago while he was talking there, you saw on tape the ambulance at the residence of Prime Minister Miyazawa. That the ambulance was pulling out George Bush, was inside that ambulance, but as we heard from Charles Bierbauer, he did walk to the ambulance, apparently from the Prime Minister's residence during a state dinner. That is all the information we have now. We're going to go to Business Morning after this break in New York, and we will come back with the very latest information as it becomes available.
More reliable than most, this umbrella. Those who carry the Travelers carry the choice of 50% of the Fortune 500 for property and casualty insurance that can help reduce claims and control cost. A full portfolio of pension fund investment options and one of America's largest healthcare networks. Open in case you want quality and service the Traveler's way. You're better off under the umbrella.
Dear Folgers, I was catering brunch for 950 people when I forgot the ground coffee. Then I was reminded of your restaurant commercials where people were secretly switched to Folgers Crystals. So I tried it.
Let's go.
I never received more compliments. You made a believer out of me and a lot of other people.
Folgers Crystals, proven with fresh brewed coffee drinkers.
Thanks, Folgers. Ed Merrigan.
Again, updating breaking story out of Tokyo. President Bush has been taken to a hospital following feeling ill at a state dinner at the Prime Minister's residence in Tokyo. This is the scene earlier, I guess in the last 15 minutes or so. An ambulance did come to the Prime Minister's residence after the President reportedly complained about feeling ill at the in the receiving line. Apparently then he went to the men's room with some members of his staff and then returned to the state dinner where he apparently complained about feeling ill and did walk to the ambulance. He has now been taken, according to the latest Wire report, to the Keio University Hospital in Tokyo. He was taken there by ambulance, and again, he did, according to CNN's White House correspondent Charles Bierbauer, he did walk to the ambulance himself. We have no word on his condition. As you can see, a lot of confusion in the last 15 minutes. A lot of people running around. There's the ambulance. So this was a little bit earlier in the last 10 minutes or so, actually pulling away from the Prime Minister's residence and on the way to the University Hospital in Tokyo, presumably, which was not too far away. Again, no word on his condition. We will keep you updated with the very, very latest information. In the meantime, we're going to go to New York. Deborah Marchini is there, and she has the latest business news. Deborah?
Good morning, Patrick, and thank you. Word of the president's illness apparently prompting some reaction on world financial markets, though as of last check, not a terribly dramatic one. London stocks, the Financial Times 100 share index at last check showing a loss of 38 points. The London market had been down 31 points prior to word of the president's illness. The dollar has given back a little bit of ground, but it remains higher against the world's major currencies. The dollar's up a half pfennig at last check against the German mark. That's a loss of about a quarter pfennig from where the currency was earlier. And U.S. Treasury bond prices appear also to have lost a little bit of ground since word of the president's illness. The 30-year benchmark bond had been down 5/32 in price after a big rally yesterday. At last check, it was down 9/32. That price puts the yield at 7.41%. Well, prior to the president's illness, he and Japanese Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa had agreed to take steps that would stimulate global growth and help the world's economy get moving again. The announcement made after a meeting of the two leaders earlier today. Specific details of the program were supposed to be announced in President Bush's State of the Union address later this month, but the plan is expected to call for increased public investment by the U.S. and Japan, as well as stepped-up international development programs. The president said the growth plan will help the U.S. on the home front as well. And in an interview with Lou Dobbs, who's been traveling with the president, Treasury Secretary Nicholas Brady said the plan for fiscal growth could be carried out without busting the U.S. budget agreement.
Certainly the budget agreement applies to the United States and not to Japan, so it can be done in Japan because that's what they're doing. Inside the United States, Lou, I think it can. The president is committed to staying to the discipline in the budget agreement because he feels it's very important that long-term interest rates continue to come down.
With those interest rates declining right now, that's a favorable condition. There's no concern about fiscal stimulus at this point, resulting in heightened concerns about inflation?
I don't think so, Lou. I would say that anybody who's got one friend in the private sector and would be willing to ask him about whether we got inflation in the United States will find out very quickly that we don't. I mean, I know that the statistics indicate that there still is some, but that's a mystery to me, and I've never had it explained as to why it exists.
Mr. Secretary, with fiscal stimulus, lowering rates, monetary policy now easing at a rapid rate for the better than past year, how much room is left to ease in your judgment in terms of monetary policy?
Well, Lou, obviously this is the purview of the Federal Reserve and the Bank of Japan, independent authorities. But the fact that there have been significant cuts in the United States this last year, the last one 1%, the lowest discount rate in some 17 or 18 years, still we have a positive interest rates at a time in the recovery when that's not as fast as it should be. So who knows? If it's needed, I have no reason to suspect that it might not be possible.
The complete interview with Secretary Brady scheduled to be seen tonight on Moneyline at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. While world trade should eventually get a boost from the meetings in Tokyo, the U.S.-Japan auto talks seem to be stalled. White House spokesman Marlon Fitzwater said the discussions are, quote, severe. Fitzwater said U.S. negotiators have been pressing hard, but the Japanese were not coming through with major concessions. Earlier today, 5 major Japanese car makers unveiled proposals to boost anemic sales of U.S. cars in their country, but the U.S. apparently is asking for even more widespread concessions. Share prices plunged in Tokyo overnight. Japanese investors were discouraged by dim prospects for lower interest rates and the lack of an agreement between the U.S. and Japan on a higher yen. The Nikkei tumbling 851 points, or more than 3.5%. Those losses coming, of course, before word of President Bush's illness. And Business Morning will be back after this.
For years, the German motoring press has ranked Mercedes and BMW ahead of Audi. But recent tests conducted by 3 of that country's top automotive publications reversed that order. The car they put at the head of this very impressive class was the all-new Audi 100. For your copy of the test that put Audi first, call 1-800-4AUDI.
It's said that by the end of this century, Japan will have a stranglehold on the technology for automobiles, semiconductors, fiber optics, steel, and half the new patents in the world. Isn't it ironic? When Japan needed the technology for a new stock market, they found it in a stock market Americans have had for 20 years. The NASDAQ stock market.
In today's global economy, many people commute to work by 747, often KLMs. That's because we go to more cities in Europe, Africa, and the Mideast than all U.S. airlines combined, which helps explain why KLM is the airline of the seasoned traveler, no matter how long the commute.
Hello, everybody. We want to update you once again on the morning's breaking news story. President Bush has been taken to a hospital in Tokyo after being taken ill at a dinner with Japanese Prime Minister Miyazawa. Information is still very sketchy at this hour. We do not have a report yet on Mr. Bush's condition. We are efforting to get that. We do know that the president walked to an ambulance outside the Japanese Prime Minister's residence where the dinner was being held, and the ambulance whisked him off to a hospital. We are, of course, following this story very closely, and we will update details just as soon as they become available. These are pictures taken earlier outside the Japanese Prime Minister's residence. This is an ambulance that was waiting to take Mr. Bush to that hospital. He apparently complained of being ill while he was in a reception line, and then he was taken to the men's room with some members of his staff. He came back to that reception line and eventually sat down at the state dinner. He was in the middle of the main course when he was apparently taken seriously ill and was taken to a hospital. We have this just in now. President Bush has returned to his residence at the Imperial Palace. He left the dinner under his own steam, that is according to this report. He was accompanied by Dr. Burton Lee. That is his personal physician who travels with President Bush. White House spokesman says he felt ill during the dinner. He was forced to leave. The president did walk to the ambulance by himself. A pool reporter has asked Mr. Bush how he felt, and he is saying that he felt good. Again, a pool reporter has spoken with Mr. Bush, apparently as he was on the way to the ambulance, and Mr. Bush replied that he felt good. We do have a report now that Mr. Bush has visited the hospital. The president has apparently been seen by some Japanese physicians as well as his own personal physician who travels with him. And he has now gone back to his visiting residence. We're going to go live now to CNN's Charles Bierbauer. He's in Tokyo with the latest for us. Charles, what can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that indeed President Bush has returned to the official guest house here. That's the Akasaka Palace. He has not gone to the hospital. We were getting some misleading information earlier, and we certainly apologize for giving any sense that he'd left for the hospital. We saw an ambulance via television pulling away from the residence of Prime Minister Miyazawa. What we know is that President Bush, at the dinner being hosted for him by the Prime Minister, felt ill. Apparently felt ill enough that he thought he should leave the dinner. He was checked by his White House physician, Dr. Burton Lee, not given any medication from what we are told, but the decision was taken that the president perhaps ought to get some rest and went, therefore, back to the palace. Left the Prime Minister's residence under his own power. He was walking. Correspondent Mary Tillotson, who was the pool reporter at the dinner this evening, reported that the president looked drawn and disheveled, but when she asked the president how he felt, Mr. Bush said he felt good. That notwithstanding, the information is that he is now presumably resting back at Akasaka Palace. The precise nature of the illness is not clear. I saw the president about 3.5 hours ago when I did an interview with him over at the palace. At that point, he talked about some of the rigors of this kind of traveling, said he is feeling the effects of jet lag, waking at some odd hours, felt it worst when he was in Australia a few days ago. This is now day 10 of a 12-day trip. So the president, we would presume now, is resting, and we hope to get more information from the White House in the course of the evening over here. That's about what we know at this point.
All right, again, we want to correct our reporting. As just reported by Charles Bierbauer, President Bush was not taken to a hospital in Tokyo. He did take ill at that state dinner with Prime Minister Miyazawa, but he was taken back to the official visiting dignitary's residence at the Imperial Palace, and he is being seen by his personal physician. We're going to go back now. This is the tape of President Bush as he left that state dinner after complaining that he was not feeling well. And I believe we're going to see very shortly President Bush walking on his own into this Japanese ambulance that was waiting for him. Again, this is tape taken earlier, unedited tape taken earlier. This tape being fed to us from our bureau in Tokyo. This is as it happened outside the site of that state dinner. As you can see, Secret Servicemen there waiting for the president to come out. One of them not too happy with the pool camera being shot down on that ambulance. It was awaiting President Bush.
White House press. We're here to cover the president. No, it was our job. No.
Again, this was the scene earlier.
No.
They did have an ambulance standing by, and first report said the president was going to be taken to a hospital, and indeed was taken to a hospital in Tokyo, but we now know that is incorrect. He never had to go to the hospital in Tokyo. Instead, he was taken back to the official visiting dignitary's residence on the grounds of the palace. That is apparently a U.S. Air Force ambulance, I am told. As you can see, very tight security outside the palace. What we know about the president's condition at this point in time is that CNN correspondent Mary Tillotson spoke to him as he walked out of that state dinner. She asked him how he felt, and he said good. And at that point, he went back to the official visiting dignitary's residence. We don't have an official report on just exactly what his ailment was. As you saw there was Barbara Bush. This is Barbara Bush live. Let's hear what she has to say.
He and George played the Emperor and the Crown Prince in tennis today, and they were badly beaten. And we Bushes aren't used to that. Oh, sorry.
Excuse me. 宮沢総理、そして、宮沢夫人、ご出席の皆様方、私はジョージ・ブッシュ大統領の代わりで、このような演説をするのはごく稀でございますけれど、今晩私は、大統領を代表いたしまして、そして出席の、政府の高官、そしてアメリカから皆様を、代表いたしまして、皆様方の温かい友情に感謝をいたしたいと思います。そして私自身も大変素晴らしい一日を過ごせましたし、皆様方もきっと素晴らしい一日をお過ごしになったことだと思います。そして大統領は、今晩あのようなことがあったわけでございますけれど、それを
This is a Japanese translator. She is translating what Mrs. Bush has previously had to say. I'm sorry that we did not hear that, but obviously Mrs. Bush smiling and speaking to the gathered crowd, gathered for this state dinner that her husband had to leave.
皇太子様とテニスを、一緒にやらせていただき、そしてひどく負けたわけでございます。
So he felt much worse than I thought. But General Scowcroft is going to speak for the president, and thank you very much for a wonderful privilege.
ですから。
You're watching First Lady Barbara Bush live in Tokyo. She's smiling. She seems unconcerned. I believe that she did make a statement to the state dinner that her husband, President George Bush, was feeling okay, that he felt ill. He did have to leave and get some rest, but that he's now feeling okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor on behalf of the President and without his assured elegance to deliver the remarks he was going to make. May I first, Mr. Prime Minister, on his behalf, thank you for your very kind words, your expressions of solidarity, hope, and friendship. Prime Minister Miyazawa, Deputy Prime Minister Watanabe, distinguished ministers, distinguished former prime ministers, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Prime Minister, it is already clear from our discussions that we share much in common. Most important, we both want stronger ties.
This is National Security Advisor Brent Scowcroft speaking on behalf of President Bush, who had to leave that state dinner in Tokyo. Once again, we have reports that the president is feeling okay. He is at the official visiting dignitary's residence at the Imperial Palace, and the Prime Minister of Japan, Miyazawa, is quoted now as saying that President Bush is in very good condition. And also First Lady Barbara Bush, still at that state dinner, seems to echo that opinion. President Bush taken slightly ill at a state dinner in Tokyo, apparently now okay. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back.
Coming up, Daybreak, followed by Business Day, after a word from your local cable system, here on CNN.
beautiful piano albums have sold in the millions. TV and recording star Floyd Kramer. Now, Heartland Music presents Floyd Kramer in an all-new collection of his most beautiful recordings ever. Floyd has a special piano style that makes every song so warm and relaxing. You'll get two beautiful albums. Smooth, easy favorites to today's most beautiful songs. You'll love these all-new recordings. But this special Floyd Kramer collection is not in stores. Please order now.
Order, call toll-free 1-800-257-1257 to save all COD charges and pay only $12.98 for records or cassettes or $16.98 for CD plus $3 shipping. Use your credit card or send check or money order to Floyd Kramer, P.O. Box 8250, Atlanta, Georgia. Remember, save COD charges by sending check or money order or use your credit card.
This is CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Good day, everyone. Once again, updating a breaking news story for you. President George Bush became ill in Japan just a short time ago. It was first thought that the president was taken by ambulance to a Tokyo hospital, but he is now back at his residence in Akasaka Palace. The president became ill at Japanese Prime Minister Kiichi Miyazawa's official residence, where he was attending a state dinner. Journalists at the dinner say Mr. Bush first was taken to the bathroom by a doctor after complaining of feeling ill. They say he became ill after returning to his seat and eating the meat course of his dinner. Japanese television says he walked out to the ambulance on his own, and when asked how he felt, the president said he felt good. Standing by live for us in Tokyo now is CNN correspondent Mary Tillotson. She spoke with the president as he came out of that state dinner. Mary, what can you tell us?
Very little. You've just reported most of what we saw at the Prime Minister's residence earlier this evening. We did see an ambulance pull up outside the door through which Mr. Bush, a few moments after that, did walk. That was the first clue that earlier rumors that Mr. Bush had taken ill might perhaps be true. The first word from the White House staff was that the president was the person for whom the ambulance had arrived. But at about 8:31, just over half an hour ago now, Mr. Bush walked out past the American and Japanese press under his own steam. As you said, he told us that he felt good, but he did not look as if he did. He was drawn, his hair was disheveled, and he looked the least bit wobbly. He walked past us, however, got into the presidential motorcade, and after about a 9-minute drive, arrived back at Akasaka Palace. His doctor, Dr. Burton Lee, and one other White House physician were with the president. There are no details as yet on what symptoms Mr. Bush may have exhibited in the reception. Of course, as we all in the United States know, and those of us who follow him, he did have problems with an irregular heartbeat brought on by a thyroid condition earlier this year. His doctors have assumed that that condition is now under control. We don't know whether whatever trouble Mr. Bush this evening may be related to that fibrillation of the heart that he experienced earlier this year. There was apparently a brief consultation with Dr. Burton Lee while they were still at Prime Minister Miyazawa's residence before it was decided to take Mr. Bush back to Akasaka Palace, which is the residence in which he is staying for the visit in Tokyo. We are expecting to hear from White House spokesman Marlon Fitzwater just about 10 minutes from now. And we will all hope to hear a few more details about what troubled Mr. Bush and what his current condition is when Fitzwater comes in to talk to reporters. We're told that Mr. Bush is comfortably resting and walked into Akasaka under his own steam. And again, more details should be available within a few minutes from now.
Mary, let me ask you this. Is Marlon Fitzwater going to be speaking in a location where CNN will be able to bring those remarks to our viewers?
We're certainly going to make every effort to do that. As you know, setting up a satellite feed live on about 10 minutes' notice is difficult to do, but we will attempt to do it.
Mary, let me interrupt you for a moment. We have video now of the scene at that state dinner earlier this evening when the president apparently collapsed, and that's what looks like happened. He collapsed from the head table at the state dinner.
This was from Japanese television. American television was not allowed into the dining room at that point, but what you are apparently seeing is the moment when Mr. Bush felt ill enough that it became clear that he had to leave that dinner, and yes, it does look as if he not only took ill but collapsed. I can tell you that in the moments between the time the ambulance pulled up at Miyazawa's residence and the time that Mr. Bush walked past us, there was utter chaos. The Japanese security were unhinged by all of this, pushing and shoving, wanting to get everyone out of the way, clear a path for the president. And at that point, we had been told that Mr. Bush was to be placed in the ambulance. Again, he walked past us, past the ambulance, and instead got in that motorcade. That's the first picture that I've seen of the dinner this evening. The American press were held outside of the dining room, and only Japanese camera crews were allowed to record that.
Again, we're watching video taken earlier by Japanese television. The scene as President Bush collapsed at this state dinner earlier today. First Lady Barbara Bush standing by, looking at this point very worried.
Go into the motorcade. Hold on 1 second, guys.
Switching now, as you can see, there was a great deal of confusion with the Japanese security force apparently trying to hold reporters and cameras back as we think this is the scene as President Bush was making his way under his own power to that ambulance that had been pulled up awaiting him at the portico of the Imperial Palace. Mary, can you sort this out for us, what we're seeing here?
If I were sure that we're seeing CNN's feed, but at this point I'm not. If what you're seeing is utter chaos, it is because of the Japanese system of the media being much different than ours. For example, no Japanese reporters were even to be allowed in the dinner tonight. They were allowing pictures of it only, not any reportage, no editorial presence. And the idea that reporters should actually be allowed to record a president who is ill and being escorted to an ambulance was something that was not going to be allowed by the Japanese security if they could help it, even though the U.S. Embassy personnel and White House staff were attempting to keep the security guards from hitting the U.S. press and trying to take their cameras out of their hands. It was a tussle.
Again, we're seeing another replay of the scene immediately after the president collapsed at the head table at this state dinner. That being fed to us from Japanese television, those pictures taken by Japanese television. Thank you, Mary Tillotson. We're going to go to Patrick Greenlaw.
Now, that was the scene earlier. Obviously, a great deal of concern on the face of Barbara Bush and the president's attending physician, as well as other staff members at the table. As you could see, the president did not look in good shape, actually collapsed. However, the latest word from the Prime Minister, Miyazawa, is that the president is in very good condition. That's quoting there at the special residence, the foreign dignitary's residence in Tokyo, not far from the Prime Minister's residence. And he apparently came into the state dinner after talking with people at the residence for the visiting dignitaries, told the gathering at the state dinner that the president was in very good condition. Apparently, Barbara Bush smiled at that, and then she actually made some remarks and actually joked about why the president got ill.
Yeah. And Mrs. Miyazawa, I rarely get to speak for George Bush. But tonight, I know he would want me to thank you on behalf of the members of his administration and the American businessmen who are here for a wonderful visit and for a great friendship, for a lovely, in my part, for a lovely day, and I think for a wonderful day for all of you. You know, I can't explain what happened to George because it never happened before, but I'm beginning to think it's the ambassador's fault. He and George played the Emperor and the Crown Prince in tennis today, and they were badly beaten. And we Bushes aren't used to that, so he felt much worse than I thought. But General Scowcroft is going to speak for the President, and thank you very much for a wonderful visit.
Again, that was Barbara Bush at the state dinner after the president collapsed and after the president actually left that state dinner. National Security Advisor Brent Scowcroft actually read the president's remarks that he had planned to give to the state dinner upon the conclusion of that state dinner, and Brent Scowcroft read those because the president was taken away, as you could see, and he did collapse. But again, on the brighter side, that was Barbara Bush joking about why the president became ill, because he and the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Japan, lost a tennis match with the emperor earlier in the day. Latest word, again, according to Prime Minister Miyazawa, is that President Bush is in very good condition at this point, and he is back at the visiting dignitaries' compound on the palace grounds. And we will have continuing information and more details coming up in just a couple of minutes.
Something's waiting inside the powerful 486 SX computer. A technology that will make it even more powerful. We call it Room for the Future. Introducing built-in upgradability. Check into it. From Intel, the computer inside.
I was afraid to go to the doctor. I didn't want to hear that I might have an ulcer, but I just couldn't ignore my stomach. You can imagine how relieved I was when my doctor said Mylanta. He told me it wasn't an ulcer. It was indigestion. And indigestion like mine needed a strong medicine.
Mylanta is strong medicine, strongly recommended. In fact, Mylanta is the antacid doctors recommend most.
My doctor said Mylanta.
Your time is valuable, so don't waste it standing in line. Mailboxes, etc. is open when you need us, and you'll be helped promptly. Get stamps, a private mailbox, which you can also check by phone, and professional packing and supplies. You can also receive and send packages or overnight mail via UPS. Now at over 1,400 convenient locations.
In case you just joined us, let us sum up what has happened in Tokyo in the last hour or so. President Bush became ill at a state dinner. He actually collapsed at the state dinner. This is a picture taped earlier by television in Japan. You can't see the president. You can see Barbara Bush to the right, a Secret Service agent telling the crowd to sit down. There's Prime Minister Miyazawa also, excuse me, the president's personal physician. Here's as you can see, the president almost looks like he's unconscious at that point. Obviously, great deal of concern. He was taken out of the banquet hall and did go back to the president's residence where he's actually staying at Akasaka Palace. But the latest word is that he is in very good condition. So obviously these pictures were taken earlier, a great deal of concern. However, the latest word is, excuse me, is that the president is in very good condition. Now, about 3.5 hours before that incident at the state banquet, CNN senior White House correspondent Charles Bierbauer talked with the president about the trip. Here's what he had to say.
Mr. President, you set out the litany for this trip in 3 short words, all of which were the same: jobs, jobs, and jobs. Can you go home, even though jobs are not created immediately, and say, I've gotten the job done?
I don't know that I'll ever be able to say I've gotten it done totally, but I will be able to go home and say we've made a very good start on jobs, jobs, jobs. Just the growth initiative, the growth agenda that we didn't have when we started. The growth agenda that we announced with Japan today is a good step in that direction. Because if that Japanese economy grows the way predicted, I think it will help create jobs in the United States, particularly if the second part of our trip here goes well, which is accessing Japanese markets.
When you get home, though, you've still got to explain this to the people in an election year in a very political framework where the Democrats and the voters are going to say, where are these jobs? What do you tell them? Has this been in any way oversold?
I don't think so. Maybe it has in some quarters. I'll tell you what, one way not to do it is the way some of these Democrats are suggesting, pure protectionist legislation that will shrink world markets and invite retaliation against hundreds of thousands of jobs already in existence in the United States. So we may have an active debate in this coming year on their ideas of protection, pure protection. And it's not only them, it's the far extreme on the Republican side too. And that's not the way to go. But I think we're going to see progress, and I think we've already seen some real progress.
Have you, in fact, knocked down the protection on this side of the ocean?
I don't think so. I don't think we've done it completely at all. We're denied access to certain markets, whether it's in certain agricultural products, predominantly rice, for example, but in others. But we're making headway. I mean, it's clear to me. When I went to that Toys R Us store and saw the fact that now American, you might say, supermarket concept, big department store concept, people can come in here into this market, that is jobs for America, and it benefits the Japanese consumer. And so I think I was impressed by that one yesterday, because here's a store that has just started, and they're doing very well.
Sell that many American goods, Mr. President.
They sell, what, 40% or 50% of their inventory? That's pretty good. And to a person making toys in the United States, I think he thinks his job is pretty important to him.
There was a fair amount of Japan bashing coming in here. In some respects, maybe they've almost become the new enemy in the absence of the Soviet Union. How do you dispel that? And in fact, how do you make it go away from some of the people you brought with you?
There is a certain ugliness in Japan bashing. And I tried to set the proper tone on that back at Pearl Harbor on December 7th. And incidentally, the Japanese were very generous in their assessment of setting a tone where we compete on a business basis, not with some subterranean prejudice in the mode. So the way you lay it to rest, though, is to be successful in your quest for more access to the Japanese market, and that in turn inevitably means more American jobs. So I think that's the way to do it, rather than kind of grumbling about it and talking about protection legislation.
Well, are you in?
That was President Bush about some 4 hours ago as he talked with CNN's, senior White House correspondent Charles Bierbauer. Charles Bierbauer is live in Tokyo right now, and we're going to go to him. Here's actually Marlon Fitzwater is going to tell us what actually happened to the president. Let's listen in.
President Bush is in his suite at the Akasaka Palace and is feeling fine, following a bout with the flu. The president's personal physician, Dr. Burton Lee, said the president is in good shape and probably will feel okay tomorrow. Before tonight's state dinner at Prime Minister Miyazawa's official residence, President Bush told his physician that he felt somewhat ill. Dr. Lee examined the president and determined that he had a touch of the flu, but the president wanted to attend the state dinner. During the dinner tonight, at approximately 8:20 p.m., the president slumped over in his chair, was feeling weak, and was helped to the floor by Secret Service agents. The president recovered in a few minutes and remarked to his agents, "I just wanted to get a little attention." Dr. Lee, who was also attending the dinner, was at the president's side immediately and determined there was no need for special assistance as the president left the dinner to return to his suite. The president stood up, waved to the crowd, and walked to his car for the drive back to the residence here in Tokyo. Mrs. Bush stayed at the dinner, and General Brent Scowcroft, the president's national security advisor, delivered the president's toast. Dr. Lee reports tonight that the president has a case of gastroenteritis, commonly known as intestinal flu. The president was administered a dose of Tigan, T-I-G-A-N, to control nausea and has gone to bed. Dr. Lee expects him to sleep through the night. We expect the President will not attend tomorrow morning's breakfast for business leaders here at the hotel, but probably will maintain his schedule for the rest of the day. We'll update you on that tomorrow morning. When the President was asked how he felt by your pool upon leaving the dinner, he said, "I feel good." The latest information is that the President is asleep at the hotel and he was suffering from the flu. I'll take your question. He was in what we might call a faint condition, in the sense that he slumped over at the table, was conscious, however, and was helped to the floor by the leader of his Secret Service detail. He remained on the floor for just a few minutes, and then, as I said, essentially got up on his own power and walked to the car. Frank?
How do you know it's not a recurrence of the previous episode, that it's the flu that caused it, not the previous heart condition?
Dr. Lee has examined the President and has determined that there's no connection whatsoever with the atrial fibrillation that the President experienced earlier.
Do you have any further tests?
Earlier today, he said that he had taken half a tablet of halcyon. Do you think that the doctors say that had any effect on him, or that could have been a cause of it?
I don't have any idea. I don't have any information on that. Terry?
Marlon, are any further tests planned of the President?
The President, of course, is under the care and supervision of Dr. Lee and his medical staff. Dr. Roberts was also at the dinner, so there are two physicians there at the time, and they will remain with him at the palace, and will watch his progress through the night and tomorrow, but they do not expect any difficulty.